Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our third session today, The Power of Native Youth, Creating Solutions for Hunger Issues and Addressing COVID-19. For those of you who've been tuned in, apologies in advance to hear the same housekeeping instructions at the beginning here. And for all of those who are just tuning in for the first time, just a couple quick notes. All attendees are in listen-only mode, which means that we can't hear you and you can't share your video or unmute yourself to ask a question. But we do want to hear your questions. So please, if you have them throughout today's webinar, find the Q&A button on the Zoom webinar platform and send your questions there. We'll have time for questions and answers at the end of today's session. And what we can't get to, we'll try to follow up via email afterwards. We will also be sending a copy of today's webinar recording and slide deck via email to all of those of you who've registered for any of today's webinars, and we'll also post them on our website at bestpractices.nokidhungry.org/webinars. And follow along on the conversation on social media. If you're active on Twitter or Facebook, you can tag us at NoKidHungry and use the hashtag Rural Hunger so that we can see what you are thinking and hearing and seeing throughout today's webinar series. Before I introduce us to our speakers today, and because we know it's at the top of everyone's mind, I just want to take a moment to share with you some of what No Kid Hungry has been working on in response to the coronavirus and school closures. We have some resources on our website. You can see that link, bestpractices.nokidhungry.org/coronavirus. We have a resource on frequently asked questions for child nutrition program options available during school closures. And we update that anytime that USDA issues new guidance or issues new nationwide waivers. So check that out if you have questions about what is available to child nutrition program operators at this time to make sure that kids still have access to meals during school closures. We also have a resource on emerging strategies and tactics from what we're seeing and hearing in the field from school nutrition departments and from program nonprofits that are operating these programs. How are they doing meal service? How are they keeping their staff safe? What are some best or promising practices as it relates to non-congregate feeding? So you can get some ideas through that resource. And we also just yesterday posted a new resource on a summary of all of the nationwide waivers that have been issued by the USDA. So again, all of those can be found at bestpractices.nokidhungry.org/coronavirus. And lastly, we do have grants available to support schools and community partners and public and private nonprofit organizations that are operating any kind of meal service at this time to make sure that kids still have access to meals during school closures. So you can access the grants inquiry form at the link that I'm about to chat into the chat box. Again, questions today, please chat them in the question box. But if you have anything to share with our panelists and attendees that's more in the comment space, you can go ahead and send that in the chat box. Without further ado, let me hand it over to Colby Duren. He's the director of the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative at the University of Arkansas, and he will be the moderator for today's conversation. Colby, so wonderful to have you join us.
Hi, Emily. Thank you very much for having me, and also for share our strength for the opportunity to have this panel. My name is Colby Duren. I'm the director of the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative. We're based at the University of Arkansas. We are going into our 7th year, and just a little quick bit about us. We work with tribal governments and tribal food producers to really help support strategic legal analysis, policy research, and provide educational resources. And really the main kind of focus and goal of our work is to focus on putting the tribal sovereignty and food sovereignty. So we have many different facets of projects. Some of the work we do with the Native Farm Bill Coalition, so we're scaling a project doing produce safety training for Native produce growers throughout Indian country, But I would say probably one of the most, the most important thing that we focus on, and one of the most important things that a lot of the work of our partner organizations is focusing on and highlighting the voices of Native youth in food and agriculture and leadership. We have a Native Youth and Agriculture Leadership Summit we'll be talking a little bit about. But I just want to take a second to thank Share Our Strength and Emily Pye, Brianna Webster Campbell, Derek Lambert, and their whole team for, in their second session, continuing to include and support the voices of Native leaders in the space in food and agriculture, and particularly highlighting the voices of Native youth. And if you go to the next slide, in this discussion, you can see some of the reasons why this is such an important conversation. We know that COVID-19 economic crisis and health crisis has having impacts across the country, but it's also having impacts throughout Indian country and for Native youth, particularly for access to food. We're looking at school closures across the country, and some of the most recent data indicates about 86% of Native youth participate in free and reduced price school meals. So that leaves a significant gap for a lot of people who access those programs to have food during this time. I think one of the things when we look at them also, by Native youth also being an impacted group, but looking at also the impact that Native youth have. Being a strong number of a percentage of the population, you see American Indian Alaska Native youth school age is about 20% overall. But what we're seeing in some of the work that we do with our partner organizations is just how powerful and incredible the leadership are with youth throughout the country and throughout Indian country. And so if you go to the next slide, some of the work that we do, particularly with our Native Youth and Agriculture Leadership Summit, which is entering its 7th year, over 400 Native youth have gone through that, and we take them through deep dives in agriculture business, land conservation, agriculture law and policy, nutrition and health, and it coincides with the work of one of our partner organizations, Intertribal Agriculture Council, which hosts not only regional Native youth summits throughout the country, but also has an entire youth track at their conference, their annual membership conference in Las Vegas each December, and that's grown to I think 150 youth at the last conference, which is an incredible number. And so the incredible youth that we'll be introducing as part of this channel have all attended both the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative summits, have attended the Intertribal Agriculture Council summits as well too. So we have an incredibly accomplished and incredibly strong panelists for you today. So with that, I'm going to introduce the topic and introduce the panelists and let them take it away. You know, I think where we are right now, really engaging youth and supporting the work of youth to help empower rural communities and address hunger issues that have been persistent but are also being exacerbated by the COVID-19 crisis is incredibly important. So I'm really excited to hear from our Native youth leaders about what they're doing and what the work that they've been doing. So by way of introduction, I'll just be doing brief introductions on each of the panelists and then let them take it away for their presentation. Our first panelist is Elise David. Elise David is a citizen of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Spring and currently works at the Oregon State University Extension and at the Confederated Tribes of Warm Spring and helps support new producers to build their own agriculture operations. She began her endeavors at the 2014 Intertribal Agriculture Council's Youth Conference and has since gone on to the IFAI Native Youth and Agriculture Leadership Summit as well. She serves her community and encourages her community to learn the importance of food and agriculture and to support youth to get involved in all the different programs. Our second panelist will be Robert Baldy. Robert Baldy from the Hoopa tribe in California has experience working for the Klamath-Trinity Conservation Research District as the Hoopa Community Garden Manager. He also spends a lot of his time teaching and empowering Native youth and with a focus on feeding themselves, using traditional foods and supporting food security throughout his community. He's also been recognized by the University of California Davis Cooperative Extension in their Master of Food Preservation program. Our third panelist is Lucas Humblett. Lucas has been with the Dream of Wild Health for one full season and is starting his second season as a seed regeneration supervisor. He has a degree in sustainable agriculture and food systems and is passionate about tribal sovereignty and securing traditional and ancestral foodways, as well as retaining traditional seeds. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Elise to kick off our panel discussion. Elise, please take it away.
Thank you, Colby. So I am Elise David. I work for the Warm Springs Extension Office based out of Oregon State University, and I'm currently the Growing Tribal Farms Program Manager. Next slide. Thank you. So I started in 2016 as a youth worker program. I worked as a food systems tech. It was a position created by OSU Extension, as well as our tribal youth worker program. And what I did was to do a food sovereignty assessment. For those who don't know what a food sovereignty assessment is, it is basically a questionnaire that was developed by the First Nations Development Institute to ask questions about your food system on the reservation. And so that's what I did for the entire summer of 2016. I conducted the food sovereignty assessment through a series of surveys, one-on-one interviews with tribal leaders in different sectors, community input meetings, and then also conversations just with tribal leaders. And the results came from not having enough traditional foods, but also people aren't utilizing the foods outside of ceremonial sites. Like most of Indian country, we are also in a food desert. Defined by the USDA, a food desert is not having a food source within 15 miles. And that is all of Indian country if you look at it. And then also the food sources we do have a super high price, and they aren't the best quality when it comes down to it. And then the last but not least, we have little to no youth involvement or knowledge. So the hardest part about doing a food sovereignty assessment is not actually conducting it, it's what to do afterwards. There is nothing that says like you need to do this step afterwards. It's kind of customized in what you need to do. So the Growing Tribal Farms program is a result of that, as well as some other programs as well. The Growing Tribal Farms program is specifically designed to create and help sustain more tribal producers on my reservation. So the adult program is a chance for 10 adults that could receive up to $10,000 for funding. And this could be any agricultural operation of their choosing. So we have some that are doing beekeeping, essential oils, some small fruit and veggie programs, and then some livestock as well. And what we're asking them to do is participate in the OSU Small Farms modules. It's a course through the professional and continuing program at OSU. And it's kind of just to talk more about how to start and sustain an operation, how to correctly plan through that, some things you could add into your business plan to tweak it or make it a little bit better. But we also, a lot of participants wanted to do workshops that were custom. They wanted to customize their learning experience so they can get a lot more out of it. So we are currently doing soil testing, water quality testing. We had a couple of people go to high tunnel workshops, and a lot of them are really interested in rangeland management. So they have been going to some of those, and then we're ultimately asking them to do a business plan. We want to see what your goal is, 5 years ahead and 10 years ahead. So that is what they are going to be doing. Next slide, please. So I'm a little modest when it comes to the youth program. I have done numerous IFAI and IAC events as a youth and love them. So the youth program is amazing. It's for youth through 8th to 11th grade. They could receive up to $5,000 for an agriculture operation. This could be 4-H or FFA affiliated, but you don't have to be. And it is a chance for them to also go into workshops and certifications. They can get tractor certified. If they need any farrowing expertise, we will offer that to them. Hay visits for any of them who need to learn a little bit more about that industry or want to learn more about the industry. It is definitely something that I am super excited. And then of course we also will promote the IAC and IFAI events because it is huge how much advice and experience you get from there, as well as just meeting other youth from around the country who are probably in the same situation you are. So I'm super excited about that program. Next slide, please. So we recently got funding for the Warm Springs Youth and Agriculture Council. This also was a direct result of the food sovereignty assessment. Since there was no youth involvement or little youth involvement, we wanted to do something to directly change that. So what this is it is based off of the Know Your Government curriculum and Eat Together, Eat Better curriculum. So one of the things that these will be customized, of course. So the Know Your Government will be customized to our tribal government. That way the youth will learn state government, federal, as well as our tribal government, because that is a lack of. And the Eat Together, Eat Better curriculum is where we will be teaming up with a local producer, where we cook some food and then we sit around the table and talk about some specific issues. It could be as simple as, how was your day? How was school? Do you need anything? But also some of them will be issues and topics that we don't normally cover in our household or aren't touched on. One of them being missing and murdered Indigenous women, something that's very prevalent and very heavy on a lot of communities in Indian country. And we just wanted to open up the floor so they can get some stuff off their chests or just talk about it. And I am currently also trying to take a bigger chunk of our 4-H program. We've had a couple of staffing issues, but since 4-H and FFA go hand in hand with the youth program with the Growing Tribal Farms, I will also be taking a little bit of a chunk there as well. Next slide. Here is my contact info if anyone wants to jot it down, or they can let me know. But I want to thank everyone for letting me present, as well as my awesome panelists that are going to be following me. With that, I want to introduce Robert Baldy.
Hello, my name's Robert Baldy. Can we get up the slide? Okay, I see it now. Okay, hello, my name's Robert Baldy. I'm the Klamath-Trinity Resource Conservation District Community Garden Manager. And I'm just gonna be talking about some of the activities and work that I do in my own community. So next slide. Wait for it to pull up. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know you all probably are familiar with the phrase, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man how to fish, feed him for a lifetime. So I kind of view that as well as with gardening as well. Because if you can teach a child or anyone to garden for themselves, they can grow food for themselves for a lifetime. So I feel like it's very important to make sure that I teach the youth in my community how to grow their own food, and also like maintain a garden and make sure they can grow food properly. So this is the early head start class. They're picking strawberries in this first picture. The the one to the left, and they're picking these strawberries, and they really enjoy picking these strawberries. And then the next picture is of them planting some, I believe those are sweet peas. They're planting these plants, and they really enjoy it. I see that one kid in the back, he looks really excited to plant these plants. So I'm really happy to see the youth are getting more and more like into growing their own food and more excited about it. Can I get to the next slide, please? We'll let it pull up. All right. So the next slide is talking about our local farmers market that farmers market that we have in our community. So we're gonna have this farmers market from July to October for our community so that we can sell their produce and encourage them to grow their own food so they can sell their products to the community. So everything here in this this farmers market that you see is all locally grown. It's all from local farmers, and it's also from the community garden I manage. So a lot of the produce that we get there is from the community garden. So it really helps for our community members to get out there and interact with the community, the farmers, and get to see that there is local produce that they can obtain if they really wanted to, and it really promotes healthy eating amongst our community. So can I get the next slide, please? Oh, wait for it to pull up. Okay, preservation. So I know Colby mentioned it in my introduction, but I'm actually a master food preserver under the University of California of Davis, under the cooperative extension in Humboldt County. So I'm certified as a master food preserver, and what that entails means I can teach people in our community how to preserve their food in various ways, like freezing, canning, drying, dehydrating, smoking, all these different types of preservation methods, because I know we can teach them how to farm and like hunt and fish their own food, but if they can't keep that shelf life beyond a week, what's the point? So I feel like it's very important part of this whole entire experience is to make sure that they are able to preserve their own food so that they can maintain a healthy lifestyle throughout the year. So you see here in these pictures, these are the TANF summer workers. They're making blackberry jelly. It's blackberry jelly. They're making blackberry jelly, and we're teaching them the importance of canning their own food, because I know a lot of the youth in our community during the summertime, they don't have very good access to food. So that results in them going hungry for most of the summer because their families are working and they're home alone. So I know that there's a bunch of these there's an invasive species of blackberry that grows around our community. It's called Himalayan blackberries, and they're all over the place, but they're a really good food source because you can pick them and they're really tasty blackberries. So we can pick them, and then we can can them, and then we can and then the kids can go to the resource center and get a loaf of bread, and they can make jelly sandwiches for themselves. So that's a really awesome way for them to feed themselves if they so choose to do. So next slide. Okay, so some more traditional practices that I like to teach my community and like to do my own is hunting and fishing. So on the on the left side, there is a picture of it's not a white-tailed deer, that's a typo. It's actually a mule deer that they're harvesting. So actually I'm teaching these youth how to harvest this mule deer. It's actually at a camp that we used to go to every year. It was called Maidu Camp, and we taught these kids how to harvest the deer, skin it, butcher it up, and then we had like deer meat stew like an hour or two after we were done. So they got to reap the benefits of their labor immediately. And it's also good to like see them learn how to do it, because it's never too young to learn how to do anything. And I feel like it's very important to teach them how to respect an animal before they try and harvest it, because if you don't respect the animal, then the animal won't try to give back to you to the best of its capability. So I'm always trying to preach that we need to respect our kills and make sure that we give it the proper amount of, oh, there's a little bit of background noise, the proper amount of like care to make sure that they are harvested correctly. And then in the middle we have Chinook salmon, and Chinook salmon is one of the staple foods that we have here in Hoopa. I've always been told from a young age, if our fish disappear, we as a people and our culture disappears. So it's very important that we keep our fish. So someone's got their mic on. It's very important that we make sure we maintain our fish, because it's always been an important staple of our community. And a lot of you are probably wondering, what the heck is that picture on the far right? That's actually a lamprey eel. It's actually a fish. So it's actually like kind of like a parasite. So it's kind of like a leech, but it's a very big leech. So this is actually a delicacy amongst our people. This is actually my grandma's favorite meal to eat. She really, really, really enjoys lamprey eels. We just call them eels because they look like eels in our opinion. So yeah, we harvest those once a year, and we try to make sure we get my grandma the taste of the eel once a year. So can we get to the next slide? Wait for it to pull up. Okay, so another important thing I like to show our community is gathering. So I know a lot of Native communities, they don't have the benefit of being in their ancestral homeland. And I feel for those communities, because that's really heartbreaking that they can't experience that. But I've always had the privilege of being in my own like ancestral homeland. So we have access to the foods that we gathered 10,000 years ago. So like huckleberries, we used to gather those and eat them all the time. Gooseberries, Indian tea, tan-oak acorns, tan-oak mushrooms. So the tan-oak acorn, I want to kind of broaden on this more, because this is actually the staple food of the Hoopa people. We actually have the name for our for people in general is Kiwanyatnyan. So Kiwanyatnyan means acorn eaters. So you're not a person unless you eat acorns, because you get all the essential minerals, vitamins, proteins, everything you need to survive out of tan-oak acorns. So with every meal, we would have tan-oak acorns. So for example, breakfast, we would have acorns and berries. For lunch, we would have acorns and fish. For dinner, we would have acorns and deer meat. So every single meal we had acorns, and we knew the importance of having the acorns because it was really, really beneficial to our diet. And I just feel like I need to teach my community members the importance of doing these things, because I know a lot of them, some of them may take this for granted, knowing that we have all these things, but we never know. We need to make sure that we keep them here forever. Because I've always been taught to make sure you don't take more than you need, and always make sure you respect the land or you give respect back to the land when you're gathering. So don't disturb the places you're picking mushrooms too much, or they won't grow back. Or don't take more berries than you need, because the bears and the deer also eat the berries. So I've always been taught to make sure that I only take what I need, and because everyone else needs to feed themselves as well. Next slide.
Robert, I know you're experiencing a delay to see the slide pull up, and that was the end of your section. So I will go ahead and hand it over to Lucas now of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin. So Lucas, take yourself off mute and take it away.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining in and listening. And I just want to start off by saying, oh my gosh, I am so amazed and full of joy hearing my colleagues, Elise and Robert, talk about what they're doing. We have so many friends that we've met along the way, and every time I get to hear them talk, I just get filled with so much joy and love. So just want to say thank you all for including me on this panel. And yeah, let me give my introduction. Sagoli Swakwake, Lucas ni Yangiats, Onyo Te Aga ni Delaguane ni Wagenyo, Waguaho ni Wakilota. Hello, everybody. My name is Lucas Humblett. I'm from the people of the Standing Stone, also known as the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin. I come from the place of the Standing Ducks, also known as Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I am Wolf Clan. On the next two slides from now, we can see some of the highlights of my career in agriculture. So since I was young, we've always had a little garden in my backyard, and we always grew little things here and there, never nothing on a large scale, nothing like that. And after I graduated high school, I got into the manufacturing industry, and I was like, wow, this isn't too bad. I think I can do this for the rest of my life, you know, retire like this, make some good money, get some good land, something like that. And I was getting pretty okay with that lifestyle. And then one day in 2015, I had a work accident and I cut my pinky off. It was an accident. I didn't do it on purpose, but yeah, I lost my pinky, and that drastically changed my life. From there, I was like, yo, I need a life change. So I went to the local college and figured out what classes I might be interested in, saw that they had a sustainable agriculture and food systems degree there. And I applied and I got in. And from there, that's really where my life and career took off. Within my second semester, my professor, she introduced me, or she sent me some links to the IAC, the Intertribal Agriculture Council. They had a regional food summit, a youth summit, and I went to that, and that's where I met a lot of like-minded people. That's where I met people that were passionate about Indian agriculture. That's where I met people that were passionate about reclaiming their language, their lifestyles, and I was like, holy crap, this is what I need in my life. So I kept going to those events. I went to the IFAI's Youth Leadership Summit that same summer, and that's, I think, where I first met Elise and Robert and many, many other people. From there, yeah, I just kept going and kept going. New doors were opening. On the next slide, you'll see an aquaponic system that I helped build for my tribe. The tribe, we got a grant from the USDA. It was a farm to school grant. And so with the grant, they purchased this greenhouse that you can see. They got this basically an adult Lego kit from a company, and it just came in boxes, and all the supplies we needed were there, and we just had to assemble it. So it was me and one partner. We built this all, put it all together, and I think we did it in the course of a winter and a spring. And within the next summer, I think of summer 2017, we were fully operational. So it's a 30,000 gallon system. You can see all those are the water tanks right there. So that's where all the vegetables will be growing, like the lettuces and everything like that. So there was you can grow a couple hundred heads of lettuce in that system. I guess I'm kind of getting off topic. No, so like this grant was originally designed to get youth involved from the high school and middle school on our tribe. So we had to develop some curriculum to incorporate into their science classes and get them out here. So we got the youth involved out here. They were helping start seeds. They were helping take care of the fish. They were harvesting, and then they get to eat some of the food too that they were growing. So I think that's really amazing when you can get some youth out there. They're helping along the entire process. Seeing that sparkle in their eye, how excited they are to actually grow and play with some slimy fish and some plants. And then they get to eat it too. So we got some indigenous chefs to help cook us up an amazing first meal from our first harvest of fish, and then we use the vegetables there. all the youth are so excited. So on the next slide, you will see some animals that I worked with at a different farm. After that aquaponics operation, I moved on to it was about a 10-acre organic farm there. I really started honing in on my skills. We raised pigs, we raised goats, cows, chickens, turkeys, rabbits. We had a donkey, and we had about 2 or 3 acres of vegetables. So the products that we raised here, they weren't really for community. They weren't really for youth. I mean, we did sell them at markets, but it wasn't community-based or anything like that. So this place was really for me to hone in on my agricultural skills and figure out that, I still want to do this with my life. So I had a lot of good experiences there. On the next slide, it's a picture of a bunch of squash. So in 2019, I started my journey as a seed keeper, and I got a job at Dream of Wild Health in Minnesota. It's just north of the Minneapolis. There I started off as a seed intern. So at Dream of Wild Health, let me start off by explaining what Dream of Wild Health is. Dream of Wild Health is a Native owned and operated nonprofit organization. They have a 10-acre farm in the middle of the country, and we have an office in Minneapolis. We cater to the Indigenous community in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And during the summer, we have a lot of youth programs. We have 2 different sessions. One is Chorus Kids, where it's ages, I think, 8 to 13. And then Garden Warriors is like 13 to 17. And each of those are like a week-long sessions. And there we teach them about gardening. We get them into the field, and they're actually planting, they're harvesting, they're weeding with us. We're teaching them about traditional medicines, about tobacco, about sage, sweetgrass, cedar. We're teaching them wild harvesting. We have some sections of the farm that are untouched, uncultivated. And one of our elders that works at the farm, it's kind of like her little experimental area. She takes in plants that she finds out in the wild and puts them in there, sees what grows, and then we're able to show the kids what you can wild harvest. And it's really wonderful that we get to work with these youth in this setting. A lot of the youth from the cities, they don't get to get outside that much, or they do get to get outside, but they don't get to go out and like wild harvest some vegetables or other plants that they can eat. They don't get to farm that much. They don't get to experience this way of life anymore. So this job that I have, it's really all of my passions all in one. On the next slide, you can see me holding some seeds. Now at Dream of Wild Health, we have an Indigenous seeds collection, and this is what my job is. We have about 100 or 150 Indigenous seeds that are represented from 50 to 75 different tribal nations all across Turtle Island. Now, some of these seeds, they might be the last ones that are out there. A lot of seed keepers, they have seeds that aren't seen anywhere else. You're not going to find these seeds in catalogs or anything like that. So we're teaching these kids the importance of saving seeds, that this is our ancestors' work. This is what our ancestors worked for. They preserved these seeds. They relied on these seeds, on this corn, these beans, this squash. And throughout the past 400 years, through colonization, we've lost many seeds, many varieties, many ways of life. But these seeds, they stayed, they preserved our people through these hundreds of years. And maybe it was just some of our ancestors, they were only able to carry 2 or 5 or 10 seeds in their belt buckles as they were being relocated across states to their reservations. They grew out those seeds, and then that continued to feed their people. So these seeds that I'm working with, we're able to teach the youth that this is our ancestors' work passing through us. And working with the youth and these seeds, it's what everybody needs. It's what Indian country needs. So on the next slide, I kind of just threw this picture in here to be honest, but like it's a picture of me teaching hand pollination at a workshop. So I think a big component of the work that I do is education. Like I said, with the youth that I work with, we want to educate them the best way that we can so that they can learn their ancestral ways. And it's not just youth, it's also adults that need to learn this stuff too. So I am very open with the knowledge that I share. I don't want to be a know-it-all or anything like that. I want everybody to know what I know too, because I feel like this knowledge is so crucial, especially with this COVID-19 thing. We all need to grow food. We all need to grow our own food because supermarkets, they're closing down and things like that. So I think education is very important. This conference that I'm teaching at, it's hosted by Big River Farms and the Food Group. Now, Big River Farms is an incubator farm that caters to underserved and underprivileged, historically underrepresented communities throughout the Minneapolis and greater areas. They're an incubator farm, so they rent out up to 2 acres to individuals to start their own farming operation. So my partner and I this year, we started our own farm. We are growing on a ½ acre, and our farm name is All You See Yo. And in Oneida, that's a word for good heart. And we feel that that totally encompasses all of our values, our goals, everything, to farm with a good heart, to farm with a good mind, to provide good food to the community, to feed our people. So a big part of our farm that we're doing, it's not just for market, it's not just to turn a profit. We are saving seeds from half of our field. So a ½ acre is going to seed production and a ½ acre is going for feeding people. We're going to be donating a lot of our food to the community. We're not too worried about making a profit, like I said, just because that's not our goal. We want to get healthy food and good food to people that need it. So yeah, with that, I think that's the end of what I got.
Thank you very much, Lucas, and thank you so much, Elise and Robert, for your incredible presentations. It's incredibly inspiring work. You all are amazing and doing incredible things. And we'll get into questions in just a second, but I do want to echo and just let everyone know that we got so many great comments and thoughts talking about how inspiring these presentations were. To kind of kick off the question and answer period of it, could each of you just talk a little bit about how the current COVID-19 crisis is impacting your community and the Native youth in your community, and maybe what are some things that are going on or being looked at to help support people during this time?
I guess I could go first. So one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people are starting to realize, and you can kind of speculate. Me, Lucas, and Robert are by far some of the youngest producers in our community, and Indian country. And so when I did my first sovereignty assessment, I wasn't taken very seriously. I wasn't, people didn't really expect that much out of me. They didn't expect a 16-year-old to conduct a food sovereignty assessment. So I received quite a bit of, I got a brush off of the shoulder, whatever. But I think a lot of people are actually starting to realize how important it was. One of the questions actually was, if we were quarantined or something were to happen, a trucker strike, or we couldn't have any food, can you sustain yourself? Can you sustain your family? Do you have enough food to sustain your family? If so, for how long? Are you going to be able to share with your other family members that aren't immediate? And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that that's not true. I am thankful enough to have a family full of hunters and gatherers, but that's not the same for others. So this is definitely impacting my tribe. And you kind of can see where there are providers in the family and where families are taken care of. And then there are also people who are reaching out to those that don't, and those to the elders who may or may not. So that's been our biggest impact.
Oh, I guess I'll go
Great, thank
next.
you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll go next. It's Robert Baldy again. So I just want to briefly talk about, yeah, it's been affecting our community a lot too, on the reservation, but we have some methods of helping out our community. We ordered some canners for the community to provide tools and empower the youth with food preservation. So we bought like, I think it was 75 water bath canners and 75 pressure canners to give out to the community so they can utilize the preservation methods that we could teach them. We're also doing online classes for our community, teaching them how to open up their fridge and learn how to cook what they probably have in their fridge, which mostly consists of maybe commodities, but well, anything helps your community if of anything. So it'll also add in some more healthy options as well. I recently planted some spring produce for our community to make sure that we have some food for them in the coming months. And we'll probably be giving that out to our most vulnerable population, the elders, most likely. So usually the produce that we grow in the community garden, we either give out to the community or it goes directly to the senior nutrition center. Or if they're having traditional dances that they will give them to them as well. But another way we're helping is we're gonna start trying to get we're gonna buy a bunch of starts for our community and then give them out to the community so they can start growing their own food. So like we can help them get some soil to help them grow their food more productively. And then we can give them starts to make sure that they can feed themselves within these coming months if this whole COVID-19 thing proceeds. So those are some ways we're helping out. I think that's a lot of the stuff that we're doing. And I know it's been impacting a lot of communities too. And it's really impacting a lot of small communities that are in food deserts too. So that's really important that we make sure that we can teach our communities how to do these things. So yeah, I think that's what I have to say about it.
Yeah, so Lucas here. Currently in Minneapolis and St. Paul, all the schools are shut down right now, and a lot of the Indigenous youth that are in our network, they relied heavily on school lunches. Um, so that's a big thing now that schools are closed. Everybody was worried, what are the youth going to do for feeding themselves? And since things have started popping off with this COVID-19 thing, there's been many resources and many organizations dedicating their time to trying to provide food in a responsible way to the youth. For example, there's a cafe down in the Indigenous community here, Gatherings Cafe. They're working heavily with some Indigenous chefs to get food boxes to the community that need these foods. Our organization, Dream of Wild Health, we responded right away to this. We were definitely concerned about a lot of our youth. And so we started planting. We did some emergency planted. We're still planting quick turnaround crops. We're planting microgreens where they have a turnaround of 7 to 10 days. We're planting crops that'll take 20 days to grow, 30 days to grow, just so we can get healthy, nutritious food to the community that actually need it. There's definitely still shelf-stable food out there, like processed corn products and other processed foods that are shelf-stable, but like that's not real food. That's not healthy food. That's all processed, and that takes out all the nutrients from it. So during these times, we still need to be worried about healthy food, not just food on our shelves, but healthy food. Like Robert says, with that master canning, preserving, he's saying, if you can't have your food more than 2 weeks, what good is that? So we're trying to host online classes to help people reach a new level of food sovereignty in their own homes. And canning your own foods and wild harvesting during these times, that's so crucial. So Yeah, I think that's all I got for this.
Great, thank you all very much. We got a few questions that came in through the chat box, so we'll go through those, and I think we'll take the suggestion of our panelists and just go in the order that they presented in as well. Just quickly, what are the types of crops and foods that are being grown by some of the new farmers and native youth, and what are maybe some of the different markets that they're looking to either provide these foods to or sell them into?
So I know on my reservation, the typical crops, we actually have a very short season. Like it just snowed this morning and I'm not sure why. But some of the crops we grow are kind of like corn, potatoes, onions, some tomatoes. Some people have had success with watermelons and that kind of thing. But we are fairly livestock based. We have a lot of cattle on the reservation and horses. So there aren't much veggie and fruit production produced this year. But thankfully we have a couple more through the Growing Tribal Farms program. In terms of markets, we have a small tribal food farmers market. Schools are a little harder to get into. It's kind of a tricky situation where we have the majority of the school district off of the reservation and a couple of schools on. So it's kind of a weird limbo that we aren't sure how to tackle. But we definitely have been very successful with the tribal farmers market.
I guess I'll go next. So I know that we have crops year round. We grow crops year round. We can pretty much grow anything in the environment that we live in. So right now we got we got at the community garden, we got cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, sweet peas. Sweet peas actually are like, I don't know what it is about them, but kids love sweet peas for some reason. I don't know why, but they just do. But yeah, they really enjoy the sweet peas, so we always make sure that we plant them. And the markets that we give them so they can sell their produce is like I mentioned in my presentation, the local farmers market that we do during July and through October, so that they have that outlet. But there's also farmers markets that they can go to that are about an hour away, but I'm pretty sure they go more frequently than the one that we have here, so that they have the opportunity to sell their produce there. Oh, and another thing is my mom, she wants me to tell you that we raise our own pigs, and we kind of help our community by selling them these pigs, and then in return we can butcher them. So my dad self-taught himself how to butcher pigs so that he can help out our community to make sure that they have their own like food that they can grow, because we don't have a lot of like space on our community to have a lot of livestock, so we don't. So right now my dad, I think he has about 30 pigs at our house, at his house, that he manages. And we try to make sure that the people that are getting the pork, or the pork meat, are the local community members. So that's another thing my mom wanted me to mention. Other than that, we have a local farmers market for the community to utilize through July through October, so that they can sell their produce if need be.
Alrighty. Yeah, I think we're running out of time here, so I'll keep this short and simple. But a lot of the crops up here in the Midwest, at least in Minnesota, Minneapolis, it's a lot of vegetables. There definitely are still cattle people and people that raise chickens and stuff like that, but it's mostly vegetables that I've seen. So with the youth that we work with, I'm going to touch on this real quick, that we get our youth in our program to the farmers markets. There's a weekly farmers markets up by us, and we harvest the produce with the youth, and then we process it, then we get them to the farmers markets, and the youth are actually manning the stations. They're right behind the counter. They're interacting with people are having questions about what kind of squash is this, what kind of lettuce is this, talk to me about these carrots. And the youth are so engaged, they love it, and that's probably one of the highlights, I think. and that gives them experience, real life experience, to take to the next level. If they want to start up their own little quarter-acre, half-acre operation, grow a couple of their own vegetables, then they can have that experience to sell at markets. So yeah, keeping it short and simple, mostly vegetables. There's farmers markets around here. Yep, that's what I got. I'll turn it back over to you, Colby.
Hi, everyone. Because it is 1:10, we do have to cut this conversation a little bit short, and I wish we didn't have to. Again, wholehearted thank you to our panelists and speakers and Colby for moderating today. Elise, Robert, and Lucas, I echo everything that came in through the question box and the chat box. You are all amazing and doing such amazing work. And we really, really thank you for everything that you're doing and for sharing that with us today. I did go ahead and chat the link to the next webinar in the chat box, and I'll hang out here in this webinar to give all of our attendees here a moment to click that link and log into the next one. So I won't close it out immediately. But just again, thank you so much. And if you do have questions that you didn't get to ask in this time, feel free to send them to bestpractices@strength.org, and we can direct them to our, again, amazing panelists to get back to you. And we will see you in the next session, Healthcare's Role in Feeding Hungry Children During a Public Health Emergency.